The fruit that we are obliged to bear, that we have to bring out of our lives, the only thing we really have to do in our lives is to love God. Everything else flows from that. If you don't do that, nothing else is going to come. I understand that it happens in my life all the time. I get frustrated. Like, I want to do this, or I want to accomplish that, or whatever, and I was like, no, God's not going to bless that. He's not going to bless that. What's the one thing you have to do is to love God. It's the first commandment, love God, nothing else. And then we say, okay, so I'm going to honor God. I'm going to pretend I have all of these accretions sort of on my life that are the semi-holiness, kind of thing. Oh, if I do this, it's all superstition. If I do this, or if I look this way, or if I do all these kinds of things, these little actions in my life. And I know I can do those things. And you know them, and you can do them. Whatever group or school you want to belong to, fine. But the one thing you're being asked to do is to love God. And that has to be the single most important and the uppermost intention of our hearts, of our day, is to love God. And but from there we understand that we can't. We're the ones who fell away from Him, and because we fell away from Him, because we choose something else, because we're so easily distracted, tempted, we can't. And so then comes that place of surrender to God. And none of us wants to surrender to God. So in our pride, or the ego, or the everything else, we refuse to be His true children. We refuse to be childlike. That it has that holy surrender to God. And we think, oh, if I can just do this, or if I just do that, and I'll tell people that I say 3 rosaries a day, and I go to Mass, 5-6 days a week, or whatever, and I say Mass, whatever. And so people think you're holy, and it's not true. It's not true until you love God. Loving God is everything. So we have to carry through our day the object of our love. So we have to think about God. We have to, in order to be that fertile soil, that deeply fertile soil, we have to think about God. And then we turn to God, and then we have to be listening to God. God is talking to everybody. And so I've told people before that I like to read the mystics, and the reason why is because God is talking to them directly. But the truth is that He talks to me as much, but I don't hear Him. And the reason why I don't hear Him is because there isn't that depth of the soil. There isn't that richness of the soil. I don't like to admit that. In my life, there isn't that richness. It's sort of compacted down there. There's too much junk. The other image was sort of the farm pond. It looks beautiful and whatever, but what's in there? What's been thrown in there over the years, or what's found its way in the bottom of the muck and the whatever else, and what's leaching into the water, what's changing the water. Well, those things affect us. Whatever's deep down in us, it's just it's changed the composition, the spiritual composition of our lives. And we have to address that, but we can't on our own. We have to address that with God. We just have to, there comes that childlike surrender, and He says to us, this is kind of the stripping away, or this is the, deep down things where, see, you haven't forgiven these people, or you haven't loved the way you should, or you carry these resentments. And we do all of that with God as well, sort of, as I said, that we're resentful, we're angry, we're controlling, we try to control God, we're unforgiving of God, and on and on and on it goes. And so we can't expect the rich soil. And in that rich soil, sort of the depths of our being, that is where we hear God. That is where we hear God. So when people say, well, I pray, but I don't hear God, you say that, I'm sorry, but you're not going deep enough. So you have to meditate on this deeply. And when we say meditate on this deeply, is meaning that meditation is simple. Meditation is just thinking about something. So I think about God. I think about how beautiful He is. I think about how loving He is. I think about how tender He is. I think about what He's given us, how He creates a home here in this world, but then also our perfect home in heaven, and on and on and on. I can think of those things, but none of those things will actually affect me. None of those things will actually make a difference in my life unless I meditate on them deeply, which doesn't change the character of meditation. There isn't some sort of magic or formula that now this is the deep meditation. No. It's just that meditation that happens from a deep place, that place that we don't want to go, that place where we're hurt, where we're wounded. It's a simple meditation. Meditation is the easiest thing, but it's in a different place. And that's the place where we have to sort of invite God in there all the time. If you want to know if you love God, look for the fruit of love in your life. So if you're quickly moved to impatience, quickly moved to anger, quickly moved to self-preservation, if you quickly go to those places of distrust, that's not of God. The fruit that He's looking for, the fruit is that openness, that generosity, where where the saints ahead of us, where they've forgiven their enemies, where they've given of themselves to people who don't appreciate them, where they're willing to go the extra mile for people who don't care about them or don't love them. One of the, besides forgiveness of our enemies, it's difficult enough to forgive the people that love us, but forgive our enemies is powerful. Also, joy, and there's a real joy, not the foolishness or the childishness of just sort of people who ignore important things in their life and, they push it all aside. Let's just be happy. Let's just talk about something light, and that's not joy. That's not it. If you watch saints, they're willing to embrace the most difficult things in their life. They're willing to take it in deeply, richly. So they're willing to be hurt and wounded, sort of have their hearts broken all the time. All the time. And yet, coming from that brokenness is this just peacefulness. Comes a generosity, comes a joy. And it's not a giddiness kind of joy or just laughing all the time, but there's just a smile. And so I was referencing some of the things that, like baby steps for me, it's just like I have to smile at God. I have to start my day by saying, here we go. No matter what I'm feeling, whatever. And those are the baby steps. And so like that, we would say throughout our day to God, I love you, I love you, I love you, I love you. And that brings you back to that meditation of saying, do I really love you in the midst of, suffering? People are in difficult situations where they're worried about their livelihood or their family or their, illness, and or they have chronic pain, or they just have chronic things in their life where it's never solved, but they're willing to bear that, and that sort of breaks them all the time. But in that, they just kind of keep turning it over to God, and they say to God, I love you, I love you, I love you. It's like that prayer is always on their lips, and underneath that I love you is so many other things that come from the quiet time that they have with God, that comes from the meditation of reading the scriptures, that kind of thing. And they just kind of go back to that, I love you. And then, and that is the one thing that brings joy to my life, no matter what happens, if everybody were to abandon me, if I lost my reputation, my honor, all my belongings, my health, all those kinds of things that the saints down through the ages have just abandoned and given to God, right? But they still carry with them that great joy. At one point in the homily, I referred to, sort of if you understand your guardian angel, and your guardian angel is with you, and then he also is with you, like spiritually as well, when you pray, and as you go through how you respond to people and all that. I sort of apologize to my guardian angel for all the bad things that he's going to see, including a hardened heart, and the sort of the anger, the resentment, the whatever that comes, the distrust that comes out of me all the time. And then he would know it best, because he sort of knows me really well. Other people that might not pick up on it always, they might. So when I admit that, it's not because I want to say to you, oh, that's okay, that you have a heart of heart, that your heart of heart, or that you're sinful too. It's not okay. It's not okay for me. It's not okay for you. But what is my great hope in all of that, or how do I deal with it, is that I know there is a witness, my guardian angel, Mary, the saints, and I know they're going to see all kinds of things, and I'm not worried about that. Why? Because there's this point of honesty, that I have to be honest. First and foremost, Jesus, one of the ways Jesus describes himself is the truth. And if I'm going to be close to Jesus, then I have to be able to be close to the truth. And I know the way that he'll show me, and I know that he is that way, right? And he's life and all of those things that I want. But then I have to live with that truth. And I think that's what's the great hope that I live with, is that truth, bit by bit, before God, will sort of turn the soil. Will expose the soil, and then God can enrich it. God, with his love, can enrich that, and in his time, and as he wants, so that truth just keeps turning it, bringing up that in his time he'll say, here's my blessing, here's my love, and that's what I know that you want, that everybody wants, and that I want. I want God's love, but I don't just want God's love like this little thing, skin deep. I want God's love to totally transform me, because then I'll be ready for that place he has for me in heaven. And that's my goal, as afraid, sort of terrified as I am by that, and as little as I'm willing to then surrender to God. I know that still remains the path, that sort of that honesty, that openness, and then ultimately that surrender, and then he'll enrich the soil. He'll enrich my soul.